I'm Claire Walsh, 28 years old, and I never imagined my own parents would betray me. The moment their words struck came during a tense family dinner in Missoula, Montana. Their voices were as cold and devastating as a physical blow. "You are not part of this family anymore. Don't come back." My heart pounded as I froze with my fork midair. My mother's eyes were icy, my father's face unreadable, and my brother smirked with satisfaction. Before I could even respond, they rose to their feet, pointed to the door, and I stumbled out into the night. The lock clicked shut behind me, the key in my hand suddenly meaningless. I pounded on the door, shouting their names, but no one answered. In that instant, my world collapsed, banished from my own home with no explanation, only their cruel dismissal. Later, in a cheap hotel room, I tried to piece it all together. Was it because I refused to join the family business? Or because I dared to chase my dream of becoming a screenwriter? A week later, my phone buzzed with an urgent email from their lawyer. "We have a problem. Call immediately," it read. My stomach tightened. Just days earlier, they had thrown me out and declared I was no longer family. And now, through their lawyer, they were begging for my help. I stared at the screen and let out a bitter smile. Growing up in Missoula meant living under the shadow of the Blair family name. My mother, Carol Blair, ruled our family's event planning company like a general commanding an army. Weddings, corporate galas, lavish parties. You name it. She built it from scratch. It was her pride, her joy, and our dinner conversations always revolved around client lists, venues, and profit margins. My father, Richard Blair, managed the finances, always nodding along to her directives. His silence carried more weight than words. And then there was my brother, Sean Blair. 5 years older, the golden child who thrived in the business, soaking up my mother's praise as though it were oxygen. I was the odd one out, the dreamer who'd rather scribble screenplays than balance budgets. Writing had always been my escape. Stories, scripts, anything that pulled me into another world. But to my family, it was nothing but a waste of time. "You need a real job," Mom would snap, her eyes narrowing whenever I mentioned pitching a script. Sean would smirk, tossing out lines like, "Keep dreaming, Claire, but don't expect a paycheck." Even Dad, who almost never spoke, would mutter, "The business is what keeps us afloat." Their words cut deep, but I kept going. Last year, I slipped away to a small studio in Missoula to pitch my first screenplay. It flopped. Hard. The rejection was brutal. But what truly broke me was their laughter at the dinner table. "Told you," Sean said, pouring himself another glass of wine. The only person who ever truly understood me was my grandmother, Florence Walsh. Grandma Florence wasn't like the rest of them. She'd sit with me on her porch, her wrinkled hands steady, teaching me how to craft dialogue that pierced straight to the heart. "Your stories matter, Claire," she'd say, her voice warm and her eyes shining with belief. We'd spend hours dissecting old movies, analyzing every twist, every line. She'd jot notes in the margins of my scripts, her neat cursive always encouraging. "Keep going," she'd whisper, "no matter what they say." Those moments were my lifeline, the only time I felt truly seen. Grandma Florence passed 2 years ago, leaving a hole nothing could fill. But the pressure from Mom, Dad, and Sean never eased. The business was everything. Our legacy, they called it. When I was a kid, I used to tag along at their events, hauling tablecloths or setting up chairs. But even then, I'd sneak off to scribble scenes in my notebook. Mom caught me once, her face hardening. "You're not here to play, Claire. This is our future." I was 12. By my 20s, I'd moved out, chasing my dream in Missoula's tiny film scene. But after the studio rejection, I had no choice but to return home, tail between my legs. The looks on their faces said it all. I was a failure. Living there again was like walking on eggshells. Every day, Mom pushed harder. You could be great at this, Claire, she'd insist, her tone more command than encouragement. She'd mess it up, Mom. Stick to what we know, Sean would chime in. Dad just sipped his coffee, carefully avoiding my eyes. I kept writing anyway, locking myself in my room and typing late into the night. But their voices carried through the walls. Client calls, event plans, Sean's smug laughter. I felt like a stranger in my own home, my scripts turning into secrets I had to guard. Grandma Florence's words were the only thing that kept me going. She had left me her old typewriter, a heavy, clunky relic I cherished like treasure. I'd run my fingers across its worn keys, hearing her voice in my memory. A good story needs heart, Claire. Don't let anyone take that from you. But heart wasn't enough when my mother's expectations loomed over me like a storm. She'd barge into my room without knocking, tossing event proposals onto my desk. Read these. Learn something useful. I'd nod obediently, but my mind was already elsewhere, drifting into scenes I feared I'd never finish. Sean's jabs only grew sharper. Still writing your little movies? He'd sneer from the doorway. Grow up, Claire. And slowly, doubt began to creep in. Maybe they were right. Maybe my dreams were nothing more than childish fantasies. But whenever I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma Florence's face, steady and kind. I heard her voice, soft but unshakable, urging me to fight. She had believed in me when no one else did, and that belief was the single thread holding me together. Back home, the pressure only grew heavier. Mom had one mission: to drag me into the family's event planning business. Claire, this is your chance to prove yourself, she declared, shoving a stack of client proposals across the kitchen table. The Blair Events Company was her empire, and she expected me to fall in line without question. I'd sit through meetings, dutifully jotting down details about wedding receptions and corporate retreats, while my mind drifted to the screenplay I'd been quietly shaping for months. At night, I'd lock my bedroom door and type furiously, pouring myself into characters who fought for freedom I could only dream of. I sent pitches to small studios in Missoula, clinging to the hope of a break. But every rejection email landed like a blow, Mom's words echoing in my head. This isn't a game, Claire. You need to grow up. Sean was no better. He'd storm into my room uninvited, his eyes flicking to my laptop screen. Still playing screenwriter? He'd sneer, his smirk sharp enough to cut. You're wasting everyone's time. He thrived in the business, charming clients and soaking up Mom's approval. To him, my dreams were nothing more than a punchline, a distraction from the family legacy. Dad, as always, stayed quiet. At dinner, his gaze rarely lifted from his coffee mug, but his silence spoke volumes. He agreed with her, even if he wouldn't say it aloud. Once, he muttered without looking at me, "Just try it, Claire. The business is steady. Steady." That word wrapped around my throat like a chain. Still, I kept writing. Past midnight, long after the house had gone quiet, I'd polish dialogue and picture my name on a movie poster. Last spring, I even landed a gig at a small studio in Missoula, working on a low-budget film. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. A foothold, however small. I spent days on set absorbing every detail, scribbling notes for my own scripts during breaks. And then, 3 months ago, everything unraveled. The studio lost its funding. The project collapsed. My job vanished overnight. My savings bled away, and with them, my confidence. With nowhere else to turn, I stuffed my life back into a suitcase and returned home. The moment I stepped through the door, Mom's expectations crashed over me like a tidal wave. "You tried your little hobby," she said, her voice icy. "Now it's time to join us for real." She shoved a company laptop into my hands, already loaded with event spreadsheets. I wanted to scream, to tell her I wasn't giving up. But I needed a roof over my head. So I swallowed my pride and nodded. Sean, of course, didn't let it slide. Back already? He drawled, leaning against the counter. Guess your Hollywood dreams didn't pan out. His words burned, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of watching me break. Every day became a battle. Mom paraded me through client meetings, introducing me as the new planner, while I forced a polite smile. Inside my bag, hidden beneath the company notes, my notebook brimmed with script ideas. I'd overhear Sean bragging about a big corporate event he'd landed, his ego ballooning with every word. Dad would just nod along, never questioning, never defending. At home, I escaped to my room, pouring my frustration into my scripts. I wrote about a woman clawing her way out of a controlling family, her courage growing stronger with every page. It was my life in disguise, a mirror I couldn't look away from. But the walls kept closing in. Mom started scheduling me for back-to-back events, leaving me no space to breathe, let alone write. "You're not pulling your weight," she snapped one night, her eyes sharp with accusation when I missed a deadline. Sean piled on, his voice dripping with mockery. "Maybe if you focused, you'd actually contribute." I bit my tongue until it nearly bled. Inside, I was screaming. I made secret calls to a friend in the film industry, begging for a lead, but every answer was the same: rejection. My dreams slipped further away with each no, and the weight of their disapproval pressed down harder than ever. One night, I sat at my desk staring at my latest script. On the page, the heroine stood tall before her family, her voice steady, her defiance unshaken. I wanted to be her, the fearless heroine I had written, but I wasn't there yet. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. Something had to give. That dinner changed everything. I sat across from Mom and Dad at the dining table, Sean smirking in his usual place. The air was thick with tension, the clink of silverware the only sound until Mom broke it. "Claire, we need to talk about your future," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. I braced myself. Another lecture about the family business. I'd heard it 100 times. But tonight, I refused to stay silent. "I'm not giving up my screenwriting," I said, my voice steady despite the knot tightening in my stomach. "It's what I love." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Love doesn't pay the bills, Claire. This family built something real. You're throwing it away for a fantasy." My fists clenched beneath the table, my heart hammering. "It's not a fantasy. I'm good at this, Mom. I've been pitching scripts, getting feedback." Sean barked out a laugh. "Feedback? You mean rejections? Face it, Claire. You're not cut out for it." His words sliced deep, but I forced myself to push back. "At least I'm trying, Sean. You just follow Mom's orders like a puppet." Dad, silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was low, heavy. "That's enough, Claire. You're embarrassing yourself." The words landed like a slap. I turned to him, desperate. "Dad, you know I've been working hard. Why can't you support me?" But he looked away, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on his plate. Then Mom rose, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "This is your home, Claire, but only if you're part of this family. If you choose this nonsense over us, you're out." I froze. "What are you saying?" My voice cracked. Her expression was stone. "You are not part of this family anymore. Get out." Sean smirked, arms folded like he'd been waiting for this moment. Dad didn't move, didn't look at me. My legs trembled as I stood, grabbing my bag. "You can't mean that," I whispered. But Mom pointed to the door, her voice final. "Now." I stumbled into the night, the cold air slamming against me as the lock clicked shut behind. I pounded on the door, shouting, "Mom! Dad, open the door!" Silence. I jammed my key into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. They had already changed it. Numb, I drifted down the street and ended up in a cheap hotel. My mind spun in circles. How could they do this? I called Mom. No answer. Dad. Nothing. Sean? Straight to voicemail. My texts went unread. On the stiff hotel bed, I opened my banking app, desperate to figure out my next move. That's when I froze. My savings account, the one I shared with Sean for emergencies, was empty. $10,000. Gone. Hands shaking, I called the bank. The clerk's voice was calm, almost bored. The funds were withdrawn yesterday. By who? I demanded. By Sean Blair. My chest tightened. Sean had always been smug, cruel even, but this was theft. A new kind of betrayal. I tried calling him again, my voice breaking on his voicemail. Why, Sean? That was my money. But he never answered. I thought of Grandma Florence. Her voice, her steady hands, the way she told me to keep fighting. But lying there in that hotel room, stripped of my home, my family, and now my savings, I felt hollow. My only anchor was my laptop, glowing on the nightstand. I opened my latest script and curled up beside it, the words on the screen the only thing I had left. I wasn't giving up, but I no longer knew how to keep going. A week later, everything shifted. My phone buzzed with a new email while I sat in that same cheap Missoula hotel, my life stuffed into a single suitcase. The subject line made my breath catch. Urgent, Florence Walsh Trust. My heart stuttered. Grandma Florence. I opened it, scanning fast until the words hit me. You are entitled to assets under a trust established by Florence Walsh. Please contact me immediately. Assets. Trust. I stared at the email, my hands trembling as I dialed Robert's number. Claire, he said, his voice calm but steady. Your grandmother set up a trust for you before she passed. It guarantees your right to stay in the family home and provides funds for your screenwriting career. I nearly dropped the phone. The family home, the one Mom and Dad had just locked me out of, and money for my writing? There's more, Robert continued. Florence left a letter for you. I'll send it over with the trust documents. We arranged to meet the next day, but sleep was impossible. My mind spun with questions. Why hadn't anyone told me about this? The next afternoon, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my hotel. Inside were dense legal papers, and a sealed letter in Grandma Florence's familiar cursive. My throat tightened as I tore it open. My dearest Claire, it began. I've always known your heart belongs to your stories. This trust is my way of protecting you from those who don't understand. Your mother, your father, your brother. They'll try to control you, but you are stronger than their doubts. The house is yours to claim, and the funds are for your dreams. Don't let them take that from you. Tears blurred the ink as I clutched the letter. Grandma Florence had seen it all coming. Mom's demands, Dad's silence, Sean's cruelty. She had built a shield for me, even from beyond the grave. The numbers in the documents were staggering, enough to cover my living expenses and sustain my writing career for years. A clause confirmed my right to stay in the family home, no matter what my parents said. Robert's voice echoed over the phone as I flipped through the pages. Your parents were notified of the trust when Florence passed, but they ignored its terms. The lockout triggered an automatic review. I gripped the letter tighter, anger and heartbreak colliding. They knew, and still cast me out. I read Grandma's words again, her voice rising in my memory. You are stronger than their doubts. She wrote about my childhood, how I scribbled stories in her lap while she smiled. Your mother wanted you to fit her mold, she said. But I saw your fire. This trust is your freedom. Every line of Grandma's letter felt like a lifeline, pulling me out of the despair I'd been drowning in. But it also burned. Mom, Dad, and Sean had known about this. They had locked me out of my own home. They had stolen my savings. How could they? I called Robert again, my voice steadier this time. What's the next step? He explained the process to enforce the trust's terms, warning me it could get ugly. Your family might fight this. They've been managing the trust and there are discrepancies. Discrepancies. The word twisted in my gut. Had they tampered with it? I thought of Sean's smug grin, of the $10,000 that vanished from my account. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about control. That night, I spread the trust documents across the hotel desk, highlighting clauses, scribbling notes. Florence had thought of everything: protections, timelines, even a clause covering legal fees if the trust was contested. Her strength was in every word, her belief in me woven through every page. And yet doubt crept in. Confronting them meant reopening wounds that had never healed. Could I face them? The meeting room felt like a battlefield. I sat across from Mom, Dad, and Sean. Their faces were masks of defiance, though unease flickered in their eyes. Robert Kane, composed and methodical, stood at the head of the table, his briefcase open, papers neatly stacked. My hands tightened around Grandma's letter, its words steadying me. This was it. The moment to take back what was mine. Robert cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. We're here to address the Florence Walsh Trust and its mismanagement. Mom's eyes flashed. Mismanagement? That's absurd. Sean leaned back, arms crossed, smirk plastered on his face, but the way his foot tapped betrayed his nerves. Dad stared at the table, silent as ever. Robert didn't waver. The trust was established to guarantee Claire's right to the family home and to fund her screenwriting career. He slid a document across the table. Yet $150,000 was withdrawn without Claire's consent and funneled into the Blair Events Company. Sean let out a scoff. That's a lie. The company needed those funds. But his voice cracked on the last word. I locked eyes with Sean, fury burning through me. You took my savings too. $10,000. Gone. And now this. He shifted in his chair, suddenly restless, but said nothing. Robert pressed on, sliding documents across the table. These transactions trace back to Carol and Sean Blair, with approval from Richard Blair. The trust explicitly prohibits personal use of its funds. Mom's face flushed crimson. We built that company from nothing. Claire doesn't deserve a dime if she's not contributing. Her words stung, but I refused to let them pierce me anymore. Contributing? I snapped. You locked me out of my own home, Mom. Grandma Florence wanted me to have it. Dad finally spoke, his voice gravelly, almost weary. We thought we were doing what's best for the family. I shook my head, the letter clutched in my hand like a shield. No, Dad. You did what was best for you. Robert methodically laid out more evidence: emails, bank transfers, financial statements. Each page was another betrayal, undeniable proof that they had siphoned funds, bought new office equipment, funneled money into flashy marketing campaigns. They had known about the trust. They had ignored it. This is a clear violation, Robert concluded. Claire is entitled to the house, the remaining funds, and damages for the misappropriated amount. The room went still. Then Sean slammed his palm against the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. You're not taking anything, Claire. You're a failure. You'll waste it all on your stupid scripts. His outburst only strengthened my resolve. I rose to my feet, my voice firm and unshaken. I'm done with this family. I want the apartment in Missoula as the trust allows. I'll take the funds Grandma Florence left for my writing and we're through. Mom gasped, her composure cracking. You can't just walk away. But I held her gaze. You walked away first when you locked that door. Robert nodded, already making notes. Claire's proposal aligns with the trust's terms. The apartment deed can be transferred, and the funds will be released to her account. He turned to Mom, Dad, and Sean, his tone unyielding. You'll also face an audit for the $150,000. Repayment may be required. Sean's smirk evaporated. Mom's face went pale. Dad just sat there, defeated, his hands clenched tightly in front of him. A rush of triumph coursed through me, but it was laced with a deep ache. Grandma Florence's trust had saved me, yet facing my family like this cut deeper than I ever imagined. "You could have supported me," I said, my voice trembling. "Instead, you stole from me." Mom tried to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing her. "No, I'm done listening. I'm taking what's mine and moving on." Robert slid the agreement toward me and handed me a pen. His calm, approving expression gave me strength. As I signed my name, Grandma Florence's words rang in my mind. "You are stronger than their doubts." She had known they would try to crush me, and she had given me the tools to fight back. The apartment would be my sanctuary, a place where I could finally write without their shadows pressing in. The funds would give me the freedom to pitch scripts, maybe even produce my first short film. I lifted my eyes to Mom, Dad, and Sean one last time. Their silence was heavy, final. They had lost control, and I had finally reclaimed mine. Walking out of that room, I felt lighter, though the ache of losing my family clung like a shadow. I didn't want their apologies or excuses. I wanted freedom. 2 weeks later, the papers were signed. Robert Caney called to confirm the news. The Florence Walsh Trust had finalized the transfer of a Missoula apartment to my name. Mom, Dad, and Sean had no choice but to comply. Cornered by the legal weight of Grandma Florence's wishes, their signatures were less agreement than surrender. Still, I knew they had fought until the bitter end. Robert's voice was steady on the line. "The trust's funds cover the apartment purchase, and the remaining balance is yours for your screenwriting. The family's control over the trust is terminated." I stood alone in the apartment, sunlight streaming through bare windows, keys cold in my hand. It was small, just a one-bedroom. Nothing glamorous. But it was mine. No more hotel rooms. No more locked doors. I placed my laptop on the kitchen counter and pictured late nights spent writing in peace. No Mom hovering with lectures. No Sean sneering at my dreams. The victory was real, but it was bittersweet. I had won, yet at the cost of my family. Meanwhile, the Blair Events Company began to crack. Robert had warned them the audit would expose the $150,000 they siphoned from the trust. Word spread quickly in Missoula. Clients backed out, unwilling to risk the scandal. Then came the article. A local paper ran a story on the lawsuit, laced with hints of financial misconduct. I didn't read past the headline. I didn't need to. Their empire was crumbling, along with Mom's pride and Sean's arrogance. Dad stayed true to form, silent, buried in paperwork, pretending none of it was happening. I blocked their numbers that same week. Mom tried once, sending a curt text about sorting this out. I deleted it without reading further. Sean left a voicemail, his voice dripping with bitterness. "You think you're better than us, Claire? Good luck on your own." I erased it without hesitation, my hand steady. Dad didn't reach out at all. That, somehow, hurt the most. His silence was louder than any fight. I didn't want their apologies. I didn't want their anger. Grandma Florence had given me a way out, and I was taking it. Settling into the apartment took time. I bought a second-hand desk, a cheap lamp, a few plants to soften the edges. Every morning, I sat by the window with a mug of coffee, tapping out scenes for a new script. This one was about a woman rebuilding after betrayal, her strength growing with every chapter. The words flowed easier now, no longer weighed down by constant judgment. I sent pitches to small studios again, my confidence returning in fragile but steady waves. Then, one afternoon, an email came from a producer in Bozeman. He was interested in a short film concept. It wasn't Hollywood, but it was a beginning. Sometimes I'd open the drawer where I kept Grandma Florence's letter, running my fingers across the familiar ink. "You are stronger than their doubts." Her voice lived in those lines, her smile folded into every curve of her handwriting. She had known Mom would try to shape me into something I wasn't. She had known Sean would sneer, and Dad would stay silent. She built this safety net because she believed I would one day need it. And she was right. But freedom carried shadows. Late at night, in the quiet of my apartment, I felt the ache of what I had lost. Not the family I'd just left behind, but the one I had wished for. The version where Mom might have cheered for my scripts, where Dad might have found his voice, where Sean might have stood beside me instead of against me. I forced those thoughts aside, fixing my gaze forward. The Trust's funds gave me space to breathe, to write, to dream without fear of eviction or empty bank accounts. I wasn't rich, but for the first time, I was enough. A month in, Robert called. The audit was moving forward, and the family faced heavy fines. Blair Events might not survive. I thanked him, my voice calm. Their downfall wasn't my goal, but it was their consequence. When I hung up, I opened my laptop and began to type. The story wasn't finished. Not mine, not the one on my screen. But for the first time, I knew I would be the one to write the ending. Months slipped by, and my world grew brighter. The Missoula apartment had become my sanctuary, its walls plastered with notes, sketches, and dialogue for my latest script. I poured everything into the pages, and it paid off when an email from the Missoula Film Collective landed in my inbox. My script, a drama about a woman breaking free from her past, had been selected for their talent development program. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. This was real. A chance to refine my craft with professionals, a chance to see my story come alive. The program launched at a local theater where I met Levi Carter, a sharp-eyed young director, and Tara Nunez, a producer with an uncanny instinct for talent. "Your script's got heart," Levi told me over coffee after our first workshop. "It's raw, but it's honest." Tara leaned in, her smile warm but determined. "We need more voices like yours, Claire. Keep pushing." Their words wrapped around me like a lifeline. For the first time, I felt part of a community that valued my work. We met regularly, trading ideas, critiquing drafts, sketching out projects on napkins and notebooks. A few weeks later, the program's director called me into her office. Her tone was serious but excited. "Claire, we're inviting you to pitch your script to a panel of producers at the Northwest Film Forum." My stomach flipped. Real producers. A real chance. I spent days preparing, rehearsing in front of my bathroom mirror, my hands trembling but my voice growing steadier each time. On my desk, framed beside my notes, Grandma Florence's letter whispered its reminder. "You are enough." The day of the pitch, I stood in a small conference room in Seattle, my voice steady as I shared my story. The producers leaned forward, pens scratching, questions flying. One of them, a woman with sharp glasses and sharper instincts, smiled. "This could be something special," she said. "Let's talk next steps." When I stepped out of that room, it felt like I could fly. Back in Missoula, Levi and Tara became my anchors. Levi dragged me to late-night diners where we scribbled shot lists on napkins and argued about character arcs until the waitstaff turned off the lights. Tara guided me through the maze of the business side, introducing me to local filmmakers, teaching me how to budget, helping me stretch every dollar. Weekends blurred into brainstorming sessions in my apartment, takeout containers piling up as laughter echoed through the rooms. They weren't just colleagues. They were my chosen family, the kind I'd never had with Mom, Dad, or Sean. With Levi and Tara, I didn't have to prove myself. They saw me, not my failures. Sometimes, though, the past crept in. I'd skim headlines about Blair Events losing yet another major client, their reputation still in freefall from the lawsuit. A pang hit me, sharp and fleeting. Did Mom ever regret her words? Did Dad ever wish he'd spoken up? Sean's once boastful social media had gone silent, his bravado replaced by nothing at all. But I never reached out. I couldn't. Freedom meant letting go, and I was finally learning how. The talent development program pushed me harder than I'd ever pushed myself. I rewrote my script again and again, tightening the dialogue, carving the characters deeper. Levi offered to direct a short version, and Tara secured a small grant to fund it. We shot in Missoula, by the riverbanks, in borrowed cafes, with local actors who breathed life into words I'd once written in solitude. Watching my story unfold on set, I felt a surge of pride so fierce it nearly knocked me over. This was what I had fought for, a chance to tell stories that mattered. When the short film was accepted into a regional festival, the three of us celebrated in my apartment with cheap wine and loud laughter. We toasted to new beginnings, our glasses clinking against the backdrop of a future that finally felt like mine. Through it all, I kept circling back to Grandma Florence's lesson. My worth was never tied to their approval. It came from within, from the stories I told, the work I poured myself into, and the people I chose to hold close. Levi and Tara reminded me of that every day, their friendship a steady foundation beneath my feet. I wasn't running from my past anymore. I was building something new. One evening, standing on my apartment balcony as the sun melted into the Clark Fork River, I felt whole. The silence wasn't heavy with loss anymore. It was alive with possibility. My story wasn't finished. But for the first time, I knew I was writing it entirely on my own terms.